In the late 1960s popular culture, there were the three Bs: Beatles, Bond, and Batman. Each was a cultural phenomenon. But just a few years earlier, Batman would not have been on that list. Would you believe that Batman was not always as popular as he is in modern times? In fact, there was a point in the early 60s where the Dark Knight was struggling to find his way to the island of relevancy. The dynamic duo of Batman and Robin were in a serious slump, but fortunately for them, a television project came along in 1966 that resuscitated the fading heartbeat of Gotham's Caped Crusader and sent him into the stratosphere. But what does this have to do with James Bond and the Beatles, you may well ask? Good question. Let's look back at how the Fab Four and Agent 007 were instrumental in the triumphant rise of Batman. Holy flashback! In 1962, Sean Connery lit up the screen in the first big-screen adaptation of an Ian Fleming Bond novel. Connery made his debut as James Bond, Agent 007 in Dr. No, which was a box office hit, beginning one of the longest film franchises in cinema history. The popularity of James Bond began a craze of spy films and TV shows, all trying to cash in on the popularity of Mr. Bond. Some of those movies were The Ipcress File in 1965, starring Michael Caine, the Matt Helm series of films starring Dean Martin, the first of which came out in 1965, and the two Our Man Flint films starring James Coburn, which came out in 66 and 67. There were also a bunch of spy TV series that debuted around that time, including The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which ran from 1964 to 1968, and I Spy, which ran from 1965 to 68, among others. But one of the most popular and unique entries in the spy genre was the show Get Smart, which ran on NBC television from 1965 through 69. Remember the name Get Smart, because it will be very important later. But getting back to Batman and his alter ego, Bruce Wayne, our hero was struggling in the mid-60s. Sales of his comic were sinking, and interest in the character was at an all-time low. By 1964, DC was getting desperate to save their once popular character, trying different tactics in the comic. They were throwing ideas at the wall, hoping to see if anything stuck. One summer day in 1965, Columbia Pictures decided to re-release all the episodes of the 1943 Batman movie serial in a one-day marathon. The serial starred Lewis Wilson as the first live-action Batman. The strong ticket sales and positive word-of-mouth about the marathon gave DC Comics an epiphany. They contacted ABC Studios about a possible Batman TV series. ABC accepted the idea and made a deal with 20th Century Fox to produce the show, and thus, the Batman TV series was greenlit. It was rushed out in rapid fashion. Despite being greenlit in late summer, the first episode debuted the following January, less than 6 months later. At first, ABC wanted a serious, gritty adaptation of the character, like a film noir crime drama. They shot a grim, humorless version of the pilot episode, starring Lyle Waggoner as Batman. Waggoner would later go on to play Steve Trevor in the Linda Carter Wonder Woman TV series in the 1970s. However, the show's producer, William Dozier, had a different idea. He thought the show would work better as a campy comedy parody. Why did he come to that conclusion? Because of the popularity of Get Smart. I told you that'd be important later. So let's talk about Get Smart. If you're not familiar with it, Get Smart was a show created by Mel Brooks. It was a hilarious spoof of the spy genre, particularly the James Bond films. Debuting in 1965, the series followed the adventures of a clumsy spy named Maxwell Smart, Secret Agent 86, who worked for an American government organization called Control, alongside his sexy female assistant, Agent 99. Maxwell Smart was brilliantly portrayed by comedian Don Adams. Adams had a good career in voiceovers, having previously done the voice of animated penguin Tennessee Tuxedo, and would later become the voice of Inspector Gadget on that popular cartoon. Adams won the Emmy Award for Best Lead Actor in a Comedy Series 3 times for Get Smart. Agent Maxwell Smart was similar to other inept, incompetent law enforcement characters, like Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther films, or Frank Drebin from the Naked Gun movies. Agent 99 was played by Barbara Feldon. Get Smart was such a clever, quirky, and uproarious parody, it created a trend of spoofs, such as the notoriously bad big-screen parody of the Bond novel Casino Royale in 1967, starring David Niven and Peter Sellers. What a stinker. Get Smart was the impetus for Dozier insisting that Batman 66 become a comedy. Dozier got his way, and big changes were made in the final months leading up to the show's air date. The pilot was mostly refilmed with another actor, a fellow named Adam West. Interestingly, West had once been asked to audition for the role of James Bond after George Lazenby quit the franchise following In Her Majesty's Secret Service, but West passed on the idea, feeling that James Bond should only be played by a Brit. West came to the attention of Dozier and the ABC studios after they saw him portraying a James Bond-like spy named Captain Q in a Nestle Quick commercial, which also parodied the secret agent genre. West filmed the rewritten pilot playing Batman alongside Burt Ward as Robin. His deadpan style of humor won him the role. Batman debuted in January of 1966. But what about the Beatles, you may be wondering? What's their part in this? According to John Lennon, the style of the Batman 66 TV series was influenced by the Beatles' 1965 comedy film Help. The film is about the Beatles being pursued around the world by a strange cult and some mad scientists who want to retrieve a ceremonial ring worn by Ringo Starr. Like the Batman series, Help was notable for its reliance on wacky wordplay and terrible puns, as well as fight scenes highlighted with nonsense captions emblazoned across the screen. Lennon also said that Help was created as a satire of the Bond films. Parenthetically, Help was directed by Richard Lester, who would later direct Superman 2. As a result of the dual influence of Get Smart and Help, the Batman TV series became a huge comedy hit, reinvigorating the popularity of Batman and Robin. It was all uphill from there. Batman's popularity continued to rise throughout the 1970s due to some excellent Bronze Age stories, and his reputation went through the roof in the 1980s with The Dark Knight Returns graphic novel by Frank Miller and The Killing Joke by Alan Moore, followed by the Tim Burton Batman film in 1989 and Batman the Animated Series in the 1990s. Today, he's the most popular comic book character, but that would not have happened if Batman hadn't gotten a second wind in the 1960s due to 007 and the Beatles. And that's the end of my video. And if you want to get smart, you'll watch more of my videos. So be as cool as James Bond and give this a like or comment, or maybe even subscribe. It would help. See what I did there? See you next time. Same bat channel.